This is the Sikkim Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. Online at alansamuelsdcj.com. The Sikkim Podcast is a production of Baylor Athletics. Now, here are your hosts, Brooke Bednarz and the voice of the Bears, John Morris.
Hi, everybody, and welcome into this week's Sikkim Podcast. We're glad you're with us. John Morris and Brooke Bednarz, and two special guests today. The overriding topic of our Sikkim Podcast this week will be the business of Baylor Athletics. And we got two guys who are heavily involved in the business of Baylor Athletics. You'll enjoy hearing from both of them. A little bit later in the podcast, we'll visit with Jeramiah Dickey, Associate Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics. You'll hear from Jeramiah, but first, Cody Hall will join us. Cody, Senior Associate AD for Financial Services, the CFO for Baylor Athletics, if you will. And Cody leads things off for us, lead off being a baseball term. Cody, a former Baylor baseball letterman, was part of the 05 College World Series team with Baylor. And Cody has the office right next to mine, so he gets to hear a lot of these recordings through the wall, and now he's actually a part of it. And Cody, we appreciate you being with us. Safe to say you have been a busy man. You have been very busy during this pandemic. Tell us a little bit of your schedule and what's been going on.
Yeah, we've been busy, but this is when you really see leaders step up, and can't thank our team enough. When you look at just across the board, the business operations, accounting, ITS, it falls into this with getting student athletes their technology when they went back home, as well as equipment services downstairs and working through some of those angles. Employment operations, it's all been affected, the internal side. But we've been busy. It's been a growth opportunity. We've been navigating through this. I was looking at this the other day, kind of looking at our team as a whole. So we're made up of about 12 individuals across all of those units. And it's 89 years of combined experience with Baylor Athletics. So I'm grateful for that. My heart fills with gratitude, but you need to lean in these times of uncertainty to seasoned professionals, talented, who care and love for Baylor, care and love for our student athletes. And ultimately, we've been very successful through this process, looking ahead to FY21 when more uncertainty kind of lies in wait out there. But I think we've done a really good job planning out budget impact scenarios, really modeling what could happen, what our response plan is going to be, how do we take care of our customers when it happens and make sure they're good, our corporate sponsors, all the above. It's all been impacted by COVID. It's left nothing to spare. Just about every sector of the economy has been impacted. So we've leaned on our peers, see what they're doing. And ultimately, I think it's brought people closer together to make sure that, hey, we're navigating the same waters. Let's see if we can lean on each other and get through this time together.
Budgeting isn't something that when a problem arises, you can just figure it out then and there. It takes a lot of planning and preparation to get to the point where you can move forward through a situation like we're in right now. How do you feel your team has done in the years prior leading up to this, to where when COVID hit, the situation you guys found yourselves in?
Yeah, we've felt extremely blessed, and not saying that others haven't done a good job planning, but I've talked to a lot of our peers across the country, and everybody is scrambling right now. It's not to say that we haven't felt that way, but I just give credit to our coaching staffs, our head coaches. Some have been here a long time, some have been here a short time, but it speaks to the Baylor family, the buy-in. We have great people who, when we ask, can you make a concession here on the way you're traveling to this specific competition to make budget, I'm ready to go. Let's make sure we bust to that. Let's not fly to that. So it's just been across the board buy-in that has helped us over the years, for years now, put monies in reserves, make sure that we're being good financial stewards with Baylor's resources, with the students who are paying tuition to come to Baylor. It's a shared responsibility. And from a recruiting standpoint, team travel, supplies, game guarantees, equipment within our sport program budgets, on average, Baylor Athletics spends about 7th through 9th in the league in those areas. That's not us being restrictive. It speaks to our coaches saying, hey, I don't need to have the luxury way of getting there. Let me just do the reasonable and necessary. Let's put those in reserves because we've been planning. We know that there's a rainy day that's always going to come ahead of us. And so if we can get out in front of that and it's here now. There will be more in the future. That helps us solve the problem and also not have to impact our people, impact our student athletes. And I'll go as far as to say just about across the board, COVID struck. We submitted our budget for FY21 on March 9th. March 12th, everything shut down.
Wow.
So that's when the process started. We increased just about every sport program budget in those areas I just mentioned to keep pushing that competitive advantage, to build athletic success, academic achievement for our student athletes. We peeled back none of that. So we're able to address right now with what we know today with increased, enhanced operating budgets. And again, that's not anything we've done to wave a magic wand. It's been years of our coaches and everybody really rallying together to say, yeah, I can make concessions, help out the business office, help the budget, all a team effort. And now we're here today, and everybody's going to benefit from that collaborative effort.
I think most people listening to us know you were a student athlete here. You were a pitcher for Baylor baseball and worked with the baseball program for a while. But in your position now, how does that experience going through Baylor as a student athlete, how does that impact what you do on a day-to-day basis now?
So feel extremely blessed to have the opportunity that I had, and thank God for giving me that opportunity. I met my wife here. She was a soccer player. It was just a pivotal time in my life that really shaped who I am today, and really set me on the road to where I'm at today. And, I think back to that time. I don't usually think about that very often, but this week I got reminded by a bunch of buddies of mine sending a group text around 15-year anniversary for the dog pile and punching the ticket to the College World Series. I had very little to do with that. Let me say that. Played with a lot of talented guys, but playing back then, really set me kind of the appreciation level for what I'm doing today. I saw that the bus was ready to go. The airfare was booked. The pregame meals were always set up, organized in the hotel. The lodging was accommodated. The keys were ready. And I remember thinking at that time, hey, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that's making this happen. And so, I went from there, was thankful that my coaches, Steve Smith at the time, gave me an opportunity to become the GA, Director of Baseball Operations, as soon as I finished my career. And that led me further down the track of being able to execute those things. And it really created the love, the passion, the why of, if I had such a good experience, this is a way I can give back to student athletes here at Baylor and continue every year making their experience even better than mine was. And so, I'm thankful for Baylor. I'm Baylor through and through. Got my undergraduate here, master's degree here, and have worked here since 2007. And it just speaks to the people you come in contact with that I think Baylor's a special place because of its people. And yeah, so being a student athlete was a real blessing and led me on this track.
Relationships, community, home. Now more than ever, these are the things that we're holding fast to. Home should restore us from today and ready us for tomorrow. It's where stories are told and relationships are forged. Within those walls, memories are made, laughter is shared, and family is gathered around the table. For these reasons, we believe in home, and that right now, there is no better place to be. If you and your family are looking to buy or sell a home, head over to MagnoliaRealty.com. Magnolia is a proud sponsor of Baylor Athletics.
I hate my job,
but I don't mind getting up in the morning.
I dread each day,
but I can't wait to get out of bed.
You ask me why,
and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
You're listening to the Sick'em Podcast, a production of Baylor Athletics. Here again are Brooke Bednarz and John Morris.
You mentioned recognizing all the things when you were a student athlete that were going on behind the scenes, the meals, the lodging, all of that. Knowing that even if they're physically not here because of the current situation with the pandemic, we still have the obligation to supply them with the things that they need to be successful wherever they are. So how, knowing your background as a student athlete, what would you say, from your perspective, this might be like for them?
It's a great question, and I've thought about it because it's unprecedented. So much of this has been unprecedented. When I was a student athlete, what I loved and still love, and I think student athletes who compete and just sports kind of wire you this way a little bit. But it's just that structure, that routine, and that drive that sometimes the schedule pushes you and sometimes you're pushing the schedule. But we have some very high achieving student athletes that are pushing to break the limits every day. And so I think probably what's been the toughest on them is just the immediate abrupt ending to everything to be normal, everything that you long for, to finish out a season, to compete for championships, for that matter, to practice after the game and get better. And so I think the lack of routine and structure was probably the first and foremost thing to get used to for our student athletes. But just when you think, hey, this may impact them, maybe off the field, right, academically, across the board, you're seeing this on social media. I mean, our student athletes stepped up in such a way that we're breaking decade and lifetime-long GPA records for term and cumulative for the 1920 year. It speaks to our SACE department, Student Athlete Center for Excellence, led by Marcus Sedberry, and just them to be hands-on, our student athletes to stay focused, committed to finishing out the year strong, even without sport. They did it academically. And I think that speaks to the resilience, resolve of our student athletes and them knowing that this will come back soon, but let me take care of what I can control. And just really proud of our student athletes through that and everything that's taken to achieve.
Along those lines, with the decision to allow spring student athletes to come back for another year, for those seniors to have another senior year, that's the right decision. That's great for them. But there's a financial impact to that also, which is right in your wheelhouse. Tell us about that part of that decision.
So the right decision for sure. And this is where I can apply myself as a student athlete. I would have wanted that year back,
sure.
And I wanted that year back for these student athletes. You put so much time, energy, and effort in, and then it abruptly ends. And life is not always fair, but when given the opportunity to have a repeat and a second chance, certainly we would all want that. And so there have been added scholarship costs, which, again, we planned and prepared for. So you can't plan for everything, but again, this goes back to good financial stewardship, and it's not the business office doing it. It's such a 219 employees across the Division of Athletics being locked arm in arm and ready to embrace each other and say, I can make one concession or compromise here. And we want to be solution providers and make things happen when we can. But we have very intentional conversations with our coaches about what moves the needle for wins and losses, what moves the needle to impact that student athlete and transform their life while they're here. And, hey, we can not do some of these things over here and maybe kick those for a year. And I just think, again, that's what I hear some of my colleagues talk, and it's not always the case. Mm-hmm. There's a battle and a rip between you're standing in the way of progress, I need the resources, I'm at a competitive disadvantage. We don't get that here, and that's not lip service. And that just speaks to the heart of people and knowing that we can be successful if we're locked arm in arm. And so we will be ready to address increased scholarship costs. Along with that come, hey, more lockers in a locker room, potentially. The roster size increases, more equipment, more supplies. But we're ready for that. That's built into our budget impact scenarios, and so we're ready to address it.
The spring sports coming back was kind of the first big financial situation I think that most people think about whenever they think about the coronavirus situation. But now that we're kind of starting to get some of our athletes back on campus, specifically our football athletes, there are more impacts to revenue streams with the different screenings and things of that nature. So can you kind of walk us through, now that we're kind of coming, well, a little bit out of it, I don't want to put that out there, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Sure. So as things are kind of transitioning to that, where we're at. For
sure. There is hope and optimism out there, and we definitely want to hang on to that as well. I will share a number. When spring sports, winter sports, and championships and spring sports were canceled, excuse me, so that was an immediate $1.5 million savings to Baylor Athletics. And it was a savings because obviously it takes a lot to put on an event, produce an event, game management, event production, as well as just the travel cost and everything that our teams would experience by finishing out. So we clearly have that budgeted for them to compete at a high level. So we took that $1.5 million, and that's where we started addressing, along with other reserves, what's to come. Because if you talk to my colleagues across the country, anywhere from $5 million and no less is what everybody's projecting as the lowest loss for the upcoming FY21 year, up to $40 million.
Wow.
And clearly when you look at the $40 million, you're talking about schools who 100,000 seat capacity at a football stadium and maybe only being a third or 50%. And so, Baylor falls in the middle there. And so we've looked at that money that we've saved, trying to plan ahead, produce models that represent 50% capacity, 30% capacity, football with no fans, consolidated season, maybe 9 games versus 12. Gone through all of those scenarios and really said, how does this affect Bear Foundation annual giving, ticket revenue, conference revenue, TV revenue, as well as corporate sponsorship revenue and the like. And so as we look ahead, one of the biggest costs, everybody's been focused on the revenue declines that we potentially will experience, and businesses across the country have experienced. But now you look at the cost of, okay, positive test or potential screenings. Do you do antibody screening, surveillance screening, all different costs? And so as we look at surveillance testing, if we were to do surveillance testing for all 500-plus student athletes year-round for the entire FY21 year, that's north of $1 million.
Wow.
So you could easily take the savings generated by the end of spring and then just really need to apply that over to offset what the testing could be for the year to come. So revenue declines and increased costs, that's a bad model. But not just intercollegiate athletics, business across the country are pretty much performing the same analysis.
And you have to make those decisions based on what we know today. Things are changing almost daily as far as what's the best test, what's the cost of those tests. I mean, I know you're a black and white guy in most respects, but there's so much unknown out there. How do you, in your mind, kind of come to terms with the unknowns that are still ahead of us?
It's created a little bit of anxiety. I'll say that. The hamster's always on the wheel per se at night. Usually, sometimes staring at the ceiling as to creative ways, strategic ways we can get out in front of what that unknown might be. I've used the analogy it's a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and they only gave you 600 pieces, and you're trying to put it together. So you have to step back and realize you're not going to know everything, and just really make sure that you have a response plan in place to really address how are you going to handle your customers, make sure that Baylor's loyal supporters are feeling good, taken care of, knowing that you're going to have a team effort. Everybody's got to be locked arm in arm to get through it and make sure that we all come out on the other side better. But for us, you can only model up to a certain place before you have to say no more, and then we'll really have to hit reset, recalibration. If there's a resurgence of COVID, we'll deal with that when that comes.
Flexibility is key.
That's the key.
I think that has been the message for everyone. But as we're looking ahead, staying flexible, planning for the future, we also want to know what you're looking forward to when everything kind of gets into the clear and we actually get to have a return of Baylor Athletics.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to not normalcy, but a new normal, which we know that will be just for our student athletes too. I go back to them that I think they just miss their teammates. They miss the competitive drive. They miss just being on campus, experiencing Baylor. And so I'll be excited when we can all gather together, staff included, make sure we're doing it the right way, the safe way, maybe having our distancing in place, but just to interact with people, to fellowship with people, to share with one another, to talk about how this has impacted you. Because besides text, besides Zoom, some face-to-face in that regard, you just miss the interaction, being able to see people's physical reaction and what makes them go. And, you just miss your Baylor family, honestly. So I'm looking forward to getting everybody back, doing it the right way, and just being able to work together and achieve our goals as a department, in person.
It's a very good point. Can I add one thing as we close? You're very gracious in thanking and giving credit to our coaches and administrators who work with you on the budget and understand budget limitations, but I think a big part of that is they respect you and the way you do your job so much that, if Cody says it, that's got to be true. So that's a real credit to you and the way you and the folks on your team run the business office.
Well, I appreciate that, John. I really do. I'm a big believer in transparency. There is a little bit of a stereotype in business offices and intercollegiate athletics. Like I said, staying in the way of progress, CF no, always saying no to me. We're solution providers. It may not be able to get done right then, but you can promise we're going to follow through in 2 weeks and say, hey, we've started plucking away at that new initiative you're looking to create, and we're setting aside funding to make that happen for you. And I think just coaches or administrators for that matter, if it's a no right now and you have a relationship with that person, you built a relationship, You're not just a guy sitting behind an email who sends the email saying, please stop spending. But if you have that relationship and you can provide the transparency in the data in front of them, say this is exactly why maybe it can't be done right now, but to give a holistic approach of the budgeting process of what we're doing, the more people understand and know about what you do, and then vice versa, what they're looking to accomplish, can only be built in that foundation of building the relationship, trust. And I think our coaches do feel that way about the business office, and vice versa. We feel that way about them, that everybody's looking to be successful, and how can we put the resources in place to help you do that and in due time. And the communication, we always say this on the front end, is so, a year out, if you can tell us, this is really what I'm eyeing for FY22, and it would make my student athletes, year if we could do this. Well, let's talk about that and start laying the groundwork in FY21 so that we can get that accomplished. And we have to be adaptable and flexible if something takes place to set us back. But I just say I really think Baylor does an excellent job of that. I think our coaches are just special people. I think our administrators are special people, and everybody understands and respects the role and goals everybody's trying to achieve.
Great.
One that's keeping us successful now.
If you need a trailer, Flat Rock Trailers has got you covered. From light-duty single-axle utility trailers to the Big Tex tandem duals. We also carry a full line of enclosed cargo trailers. Need a motorcycle trailer? We've got them. Need a dump trailer? We've got the largest selection in the state. Oilfield trailers? We carry a full line of Big Tex trailers to handle all your needs. Trailer repairs? We repair all makes and models. We'll even rent you a trailer if you need to use one for a day. Flat Rock Trailers, your #1 source for all your trailer needs. Find us at flatrocktrailers.com.
Relationships, community, home. Now more than ever, these are the things that we're holding fast to. Home should restore us from today and ready us for tomorrow. It's where stories are told and relationships are forged. Within those walls, memories are made, laughter is shared, and family is gathered around the table. For these reasons, we believe in home, and that right now, there is no better place to be. If you and your family are looking to buy or sell a home, head over to magnoliarealty.com. Magnolia is a proud sponsor of Baylor Athletics.
T&G can, and here's why. To say my wife and I have a lot to clean is an understatement. So we go to T&G Chemical, where the pros know what cleaning solutions to use and give us detailed instructions on exactly how to use them. We never got that kind of advice from any other stores. And the prices at T&G are great. From general household cleaners to odor control solutions for our pets. We go to T&G Chemical and Supply. That's why. T&G Chemical and Supply. That's why.
We've got Jeramiah Dickey with us, Associate Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics here at Baylor. And, JD, it's great to see you. It's great to be in the same room with you as we record this. And we appreciate you being on with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been listening over the last couple of weeks, and both of you, need to give you a little bit of recognition. You're doing a great job. So
thank you.
Enjoy these podcasts.
We've had some great guests.
Yes,
it's really
make it easy on us.
Yeah, exactly. And we appreciate you making time for us. How has your schedule been during all this? Maybe we're not in the office every day, but man, I know there's a lot of work being done.
There is, over the course of, I guess we were sent home middle of March, and traditionally, as you ramp up towards the end of the fiscal year, which is May 31st, for some of the external units, that's actually when you get to take a little bit of a break. And so it was the exact opposite for us this year. We really hit the ground running, really proud of our staff and our IT department and everyone who stepped up and found solutions, to allow us to continue to work. And the virtual concepts, around everything that we did, I think those are things that, and we're always trying to find positives as we navigate some of these hurdles. And I think that's something that we'll use moving forward and has really opened some doors from a productivity standpoint and efficiency standpoint and just from an overall staff morale. I think it's been good that our staff has been able to maybe see their families more than they traditionally would, and that includes coaches. So all to say, I've been really proud of our team and really excited about what we've been able to accomplish, and it's been nonstop, 24/7. That's the thing with virtual. Everyone has a phone and a computer now, so that hasn't. If anything, we probably all need a break from that, and I know that will come probably in July. So.
Zoom overload.
Zoom overload.
Exactly.
Yeah, Zoom overload.
Are you king of the Zoom calls now?
I'm getting better at Zoom.
Yeah.
You know, they give me a hard time. I'm not necessarily technologically advanced, so but I'm getting better. Jovan has been a huge resource on that for me, and Erica, and so I'm making progress. But you said it. It's good to see you all in the office and us getting back to some level of normalcy. I think that's important, and that's a big part of our job. It's one thing to connect through text and email and even on a virtual call, but it's so much different seeing people in person. So it's really good to see you.
How has your role changed through all this? Obviously, if a normal spring, the focus would have been on the spring sports and moving forward in all of those aspects. But when COVID hit, everything kind of switched around and you had to kind of change your gears. So what has that looked like specifically in your role? That's
a great question. We had a structure in place for how we were going to approach the end of the semester, the summer, specifically as it ties into season tickets, donations, the closing of the fiscal year, all these different areas that I'm fortunate to be a part of the team with. And we literally had to go back to the drawing board. We didn't know what it was going to look like. At one point, if you remember when this first went down, the first couple weeks, there was still talk of finishing baseball and finishing softball. There was also talk of what happens if we don't. And then at the same time, you're trying to close out a fiscal year and you're really leaning on Baylor family to step up and support, and whether that's renewals or even new, not really knowing and having a lot of faith in us, but not really knowing that, what was the 2020 season going to look like. So all to say, we had these parallel plans in place that, every conversation led to another conversation and ultimately another ball added to the air. And so it was much more hectic, also a great learning experience. And I think it really provided, and you all are part of the external team. I think it really opened eyes and we took maybe some blinders off in terms of some opportunities that we had because, we hadn't had to think that way. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden you empower David Kay and Courtney and Cody and Nick and Jovan, and all of a sudden we have these great ideas, right? And we're going to, use that regardless of whether we're coming back in the fall and can host games. So I think that's been the positive of all this is there's been a lot of opportunity in that. From my specific job, my job overall is really to catch the things that Mack can't get to. We are very fortunate to have a leader that he very much leads from the front, and he is, in the weeds on a lot of things and very much a part of it. And so what we do ultimately as a department is very representative of what he believes. And I think that's important. He's not absentee in this. And so he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. And my job is to try to pick up some of that slack. And so we have, 19 sport programs, and we still have academic and disciplinary issues and other things that come up that I feel and take personal pride in trying to eliminate some of that from his desk. And he's always available. He's always, checking in and how did this go and how did that go? And I think it's a level of trust that him and I have, built over the course of, almost 20 years now that, I would hope so. If you have him on here and ask him that question, I would hope that he trusts me and,
sure.
and that he understands that Don and myself are going to uphold, the standards and the core values that we operate in. So.
Well, he obviously does trust you. You guys have been together several different places, and
right.
Like you said, almost 20 years. Yeah. I think our listeners might be interested to know kind of that background, the different stops you and Mack have made together, and how did that all begin? Where did y'all get to know each other?
It's a great story. I'm not sure we have enough time, so I'm going to try to
we've
summarize.
got time.
It's a podcast.
Yeah, we've got time.
All right. It's I don't know if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's Outlier book. It's a great book, and it really opened my eyes. And I go back to my story and how it kind of all transpired and how I ended up here today. And everything happened for a reason. My mom taught with Mack's wife, Amy. And so there was a common connection. My grandfather was the team doctor for UTEP, the basketball team, and was very close to Coach Haskins, who was also close to Mack. So I had two different connections to him. And as I was finishing up my time in school, we won't mention that school, but
we know that school.
As I was finishing up my time, it led to some really good conversations with Mack as I believe at that time he was an assistant AD, which is funny, to think about now. And I was just really impressed. And he said, when you're done, call me and we'll see if we have an internship. And it started there. And probably, being from El Paso helped, and I was able to go home and stay with my grandmother, right out of college, which was an interesting story in of itself,
right.
But I will never, that's what makes you in those situations, and seeing Mack as a young leader and seeing his growth over time and ultimately how he's refined himself and how he represents himself. It gives me goosebumps because, and not to say it was bad, but like anything, I hope I'm getting better every day and over the course of years. And he's truly been on this mission to perfect this. And obviously that's not attainable, but excellence is. And he very much prides himself on that. So I've been very fortunate to watch, the good and the bad and have those conversations with him of the why and why not. And ultimately that's, to move from El Paso to then Akron, Ohio. Being a Texas boy and having grown and been born and raised in Texas, gone to college in Texas, to then, to go to Ohio of all places, but once again, everything happens for a reason. I was provided an opportunity that I probably, quite honestly wasn't prepared for at that time, but he had a lot of faith and trust in me, and that resulted in some great things at Akron and really enjoyed my time up there and you see how this industry works. He hired a young up-and-comer in Hunter Yurachek, who is now the AD at Arkansas, and Hunter hired a young up-and-comer and a marketing director, and she was assistant AD in marketing, Elizabeth Brinkman, and ultimately, that friendship turned into marriage. Mm-hmm. And so through that, if I wouldn't have gone to Ohio and I wouldn't have, ultimately ended up at UTEP, I maybe wouldn't have met Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. And so, and then the same thing, in terms of going to the University of Houston, Mack has always been very cognizant of what my goals and aspirations are in becoming an AD, and he's gone above and beyond in trying to provide me those opportunities from an experience standpoint, knowing what I'm going to, when I sit in that chair, what I'm going to have to experience. And, so going to Houston, that was my first real, test as a sport program administrator, and it was part of the hiring process, and it just, I look back and I go through all these things, and at the end of the day, I was not an outlier. I had people along the way that very much cared and helped and supported me, and still to this day, I have those individuals, and so I'm very grateful for that, and I don't regret. There's been good and bad moments, and I've learned hopefully from all those, and I'm very appreciative of all those moments and that path. It's I wouldn't necessarily say it's a traditional path, but it's to ultimately end up at Baylor. God is good. Like I would never have drawn that up. I would never have even thought about that. And and ultimately how Mack ended up at Baylor, it's really crazy when you think about it and how everything, led to this moment, and all the trials and tribulations we've been to, gone through together, over our careers, to then be at a place like Baylor, during some very uncomfortable times, and tying it back into COVID, that was something that I think really impacted me, that, once we found out that we were going to be sent home and that we couldn't finish the Big 12 tournament, and the walls are coming down, like we don't know what's going on. And there was never any fear or anxiety around that. It's like, okay, what's next? Like, what do we need to do? Student athletes are a priority. Our staff is a priority. How are we going to get, and you just start moving. And I don't think I mean, obviously you don't know what you don't know, but I don't think we would have gotten to that point without the previous, 15 plus years, and his path and ultimately some of the challenges that maybe he had at Akron and UTEP and Missouri, and how that's ultimately helping him now. Everything happens for a reason.
Here for you, your family, and our community. Allen Samuels is open for business. Shop safely in our showroom. Our service and parts departments are open. There's free pickup and delivery for all service work, all safely sanitized when returned. We'll even deliver test drive vehicles to your home or office. Shop and buy totally online at AllenSamuelsDCJ.com. We're ready to help. Always your friend in the car business. Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat.
Bentwood Realty is a full-service real estate firm with more than 70 high-achieving agents who desire to make a positive impact in their local communities. Their agents stay actively involved in all buying, selling, and investing real estate transactions to make sure their clients receive the utmost level of service. Established in 2011 by brokers Kim Galvan and Rick Hines, both proud Baylor alumni. Call Bentwood Realty today, 254-300-4800. They're at 601 Lake Air Drive in Waco and BentwoodRealty.com.
Now, back to the Sikkim Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat.
So the dynamic duo been together for many, many years. Now in the positions that you guys are in, you've got to feel really good about the team that you guys have built here and the flexibility of those teams and all the different departments to get us to the point that we are now, where we're starting to start a new normal, see some light at the end of the tunnel. How do you feel about just all of that and the progress that those teams have made in order to get where we are today?
And so I understand the question as it pertains to COVID and coming back from that, or just collectively,
collectively, but specifically through this COVID process and everything that we've been dealing with. I
think, you look at who we've surrounded ourselves with. We mentioned Jovan earlier. We could probably do a podcast just on Jovan and what she brings to the table and how ultimately that benefits me, selfishly. That's someone I work with hand in hand, and there's a lot of faith and trust that she is going to do what's right. And that's a tremendous help to myself and then ultimately to our leadership team. And so you look at her and you look at the people, we have in that room from an executive team standpoint. We say it and we're biased and others may have a good argument, to this as well, but I would put them up against anyone in the country. And ultimately when you're united and it's not cliche, I mean, it's one standard and in one accord, and that's something that we very much hold valuable to us and the decisions that we make, and not saying we're perfect and not saying we don't make mistakes. But there's a lot of faith and trust in that team. And when you look at everyone in this department reports up through them and their leadership, we are in an unbelievable position. And I think that was somewhat of our mindset when we went into this is, we got over that hump of reacting, and then we became very much proactive in terms of our approach, such as, we've talked about it. Let's move forward with the podcast. We've talked about it. Let's move forward with X, Y, and Z as it pertains to some of the different areas, and let's not operate in fear, and let's use this as an opportunity to get out in front. And we're competitive, and so I appreciate that about the team. And as we start coming back, I don't, if anything, I'm looking at our team saying, okay, you have to take a break. Like you need a week off. You need something to get yourself back to neutral, because it has been 24/7. And I can't say, I think about, like, it's hard as a father with 3 little kids at home that normally dad's not home Monday through Friday. And so when I'm home, it's fun, not on Zoom calls and not when you're working. And so, but I'm very fortunate. I have a wife that can take, in a lot of cases, people like Courtney and Jovan, who are moms first and foremost, and, have kids. And, I remember talking to Jovan early in this process, and I'm like, it got quiet. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm hiding in the closet, the kids were, I think, trying to find her, and she was trying to get some space. It's little things like that you just don't think about, and the struggles maybe people are going through, and not to be overly dramatic. I mean, everyone's worked through it, but, all to say, I'm really proud, and I can't tell you how everything is going to end up as we, come back and on board. But I can assure you this, we've planned the work, and we'll work the plan, and we have faith and confidence in that. And so hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
But I am excited for the return. I realize now more than ever that I'm very much a social being, and I need to see people. So, it's been good to, now that we're starting to ramp up and have student athletes returning, it's been good to see them and connect. And so really enjoyed that.
This is the week that we have football student athletes back, voluntary workouts began on Monday. And you and the executive staff and everybody really are taking this very seriously. I mean, we want them back, but we want it in the right way, and there's an expense to that as we talk about the business of Baylor Athletics. You know, to do things the right way, pull back the curtain a little bit and share, there's a real expense to doing it the right way.
There is. You know, we very early on went through this very extensive process, and Mack was leading it in terms of what our priorities are, and you know, for a department like ours, as with, you know, national championship aspirations, we have a lot of priorities, but we kept going back to, you know, what do we need to serve our student athletes and make sure our staff is okay, and we needed to prioritize as such, and so going in with that lens on as we were making these financial decisions. And you know, I think it's, you know, I'd be remiss to say, you know, not say if we didn't operate fiscally responsible prior, we probably wouldn't be in as good of a position as we are right now. It doesn't mean that you know, it's been, you know, hasn't been uncomfortable. There's been some uncomfortable decisions, but all in all, you know, it was somewhat reinforcing our stance always from a budget standpoint of this is why we make the decisions we do in past years, because it will rain. It's guaranteed it will rain, and it's been raining a lot. Yeah. And so we've been able to implement and use some of these templates that we've been using for the past couple of years. And so, you know, when you look at Kenny Boyd and what him and our health and wellness staff have done, and ultimately Henry Howard and our facilities and event management, and, you know, there are a lot of things that I know enough to be dangerous, but some, you know, they are experts in their areas, and we're leaning on them to tell us what we need and why we need it. And you know, and so through that process, it's, you know, traditionally you think all these requests end up on a desk and someone, you know, but it's been neat to go through that process with them and actually talk through it, and them get to the level of, well, let's punt on that. We don't need that until basketball season, or, you know, and really have these, you know, efficient, strategic conversations around it. I can tell you it makes Cody smile, you know, as he's concerned, as am I, about the bottom line. But, you know, it's if you always uphold what's in the best interest of your student athletes, and health and wellness is key right now. You know, our hope is that we've made the right decisions along the way. So.
Well, getting these athletes back, it's a step in the right direction, getting them back on the field and doing those voluntary workouts. But it's also been just as busy on the ticketing side, getting ready for football season. Tell us a little bit about where we are right now with season ticket renewals and things of that nature. Well,
we had, you know, I think, JMO, you had said it, you know, we had talked early on about the Baylor family. And that's something since the day I arrived, you know, their resiliency and, you know, it's been an uncomfortable time, you know, and you know, and we finally get over that hump. You know, we have an unbelievable athletic year. We're having an unbelievable athletic season, academically, you know, so on and off the field. And then to have this, it's like, you got to be kidding me. You know, I don't, we never doubted that and ultimately very much needed them, but you were in this uncomfortable position of how much do we push? And we were fortunate that we didn't have to push that much because they pushed. We had people calling us. We had people responding immediately. We kept to our plan, you know, and from a renewal standpoint, over 20,000 season tickets. People don't even know if we're having a season right now. That just tells you the support that we have from our Baylor family, and that's powerful, you know, and that's something that you know, they need to understand how much we care and appreciative of that. And so, you know, it's not just the season tickets, it's the, you know, the donations. I don't know if we have our official number yet, but we're fast approaching maybe the highest fundraising number that we've ever had. To do that, you know, in this season that we're living right now is remarkable. You know, we will be able to hit the ground running. We have a great foundation. We have the season ticket base. We've had, I believe, a 90% renewal rate, which is right where we like to be. And you know, all to say, been really proud of how our Bear Foundation team has stepped up during uncomfortable times, but also very proud of our fan base. And that's been it was something that when you're balancing, it goes back to your question before, when you're balancing a budget and you're looking at the revenue, I don't know if people always connect the dots of how important that is and ultimately how that does impact your resources and all those things that Kenny and Henry and other people in our department need for us to onboard our student athletes. It very much it comes back to, your resources. And so we probably need to do a better job of telling that story of how grateful we are to them, because we couldn't do what we do without them.
Very well said. We want to ask you a question. We like to ask all of our guests here on the Sikkim podcast. When we get back to normal, the new normal, whatever that looks like, what are you most looking forward to when Baylor Athletics is back?
I don't know, if I don't know what others have answered, but this is maybe generic in nature. But I'm looking forward to having the student athletes back. That's a big part of why we do what we do. That's one of the separating factors in this being truly a business and ultimately us serving. And so not having them here, not having that and the things that go along with it. Like I'm looking forward to those 110-degree weather practices, and us being out on the field and me getting extremely sunburned.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that and to create those relationships and onboarding our freshmen. And that's one of my favorite times of the year, and so, and it's generic, but I'm looking forward to having the student athletes back.
Well, we appreciate your time. We really do. Thanks for sharing with us, and keep up the good work. I kind of states the obvious, but thanks for all you're doing behind the scenes, and we appreciate your time today. Thanks for being on this week's Sikkim podcast. Hope you enjoyed hearing from Jeramiah Dickey, Baylor's Associate Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics. Earlier, we heard from Cody Hall, Senior Associate AD for Financial Services. A look really behind the scenes of Baylor Athletics, the business of Baylor Athletics. Appreciate both JD and Cody. And that's this week's Sikkim podcast. For Brooke Bednarz, I'm John Morris. We'll talk to you next week with another edition of the Sikkim podcast.
You've been listening to the Sikkim podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. Online at alansamuelsdcj.com. The Sikkim podcast has been a production of Baylor Athletics.